Welcome back. There's a lot of money and effort being put into finding a cure for cancer. But it isn't only scientists, oncologists, and naturopaths at the forefront. Increasingly, veterinarians are playing a key part in the search for answers. Because as Sandy Ronaldo reveals, there are treatments for cancer in dogs that are showing real promise in humans.
Every day around 7 a.m., Max's tail predicts it's time to get up.
Good morning.
Time for some morning love.
Okay, come on. Come on.
And the first walk of the day in his Toronto backyard. Max is a 9-year-old golden doodle. Tell me about Max.
He's a very gentle, friendly dog.
Andrea Haran is Max's owner.
I knew we had a good dog, actually, when he was about 2 and he was chewing on a bone. And my niece walked by and picked the bone up, and I froze because I thought, oh my God, what's gonna happen? And then he just looked up and sighed.
You might notice something else about Max. He walks with a bit of a limp. And if you look closely, you'll see why. Max is missing a leg. A story that started 6 months earlier. When did you notice that something was up, something that might be wrong?
He started to limp a little bit. We thought, oh, he must have, been darting after a squirrel or something like that and just sort of pulled something. One day I came home and he just did not even get up to say hello, which was very unusual.
Andrea took Max to the vet. Turns out it wasn't an injury. It was something much more sinister. Osteosarcoma, bone cancer. Andrea's daughter, Galen, doesn't remember life without Max. She was just 6 when he came into her life.
The dog is a member of your family. It's easy to go to that dark place and think, we're gonna lose him.
Yeah, I honestly thought it was the worst, and just so I could prepare myself if it were to happen.
The prognosis wasn't great. Treatment meant amputation and chemotherapy, and he'd still probably only have a year to live.
So at that point, were you thinking, we're gonna have to put him down?
In my head, what I'm thinking is, that's not a nice life. You have 1 year, you get your leg amputated, you do all these treatments. That's not that nice.
Despite her reservations, Andrea opted for the amputation and chemo, and the reason she changed her mind is why she's here today. This is the Animal Cancer Centre at the Ontario Veterinary College, part of the University of Guelph, a comprehensive facility treating pets with cancer. It's also the only non-American member of the National Cancer Institute Consortium that investigates translational medicine, how animal medicine can help the human world.
You are just too exuberant.
Max has had 4 rounds of chemotherapy and he's doing well, no terrible side effects. And today, something special. Max is part of a clinical trial to test a vaccine that's never been widely tested on dogs or humans. Dr. Paul Woods is a veterinary cancer specialist.
What we're hoping to do is now with the chemotherapy and with this clinical trial is ideally prevent, but more realistically delay the return of the cancer.
So there's no doubt the cancer will come back. This is simply about extending his life.
For most dogs, yes. I have to say, though, we do get cures as well, where some dogs, with our therapies, that the cancer never does come back.
Max is getting a vaccine that contains listeria, bacteria that will put his immune system into cancer-fighting mode. In a small study, the vaccine seemed to delay osteosarcoma's return for 2 to 3 years longer than expected. A true eureka moment. Now Max is part of a larger study to see how it stands up to more rigorous scrutiny.
If we could show a positive response with these dogs with their osteosarcoma, then we can use that therapy to help other dogs, but some of that may also translate to help kids with osteosarcoma in the future as well.
The old joke is that dogs start to look like their owners, but genetically they do look a lot like us. 84% of human and dog DNA is identical, and many of the diseases we share are also similar. Under a microscope, osteosarcoma genes in dogs and humans look the same. So what can the human world learn by studying how cancer progresses in dogs?
When both these groups are coming up with spontaneous cancers, some of them have many things in common, and so some of the studies that are done, what they call comparative oncology studies, may give some information about the biological nature of cancer, which could be very helpful to people, as well as obviously very helpful to pets as well.
Comparative oncology. It's the study of cancer in animals and what humans can learn from the results. The fact that Max's cancer could one day help save a child isn't lost on Andrea. Was that an impetus for you in involving Max in these trials?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's one thing if it happens to a dog, but if it happens to your kid, that's...
South of the border in Fort Collins, Colorado, is the world's largest animal cancer center. There's a statue out front of the center's founder, a veterinarian committed to fighting animal cancers. But what's extraordinary is how his work has helped humans. Dr. Steve Withrow retired 7 years ago, although he doesn't seem to realize it.
What's happening?
I just came down to check on you.
Oh, did you?
So I hear you walk around this place like
Yeah.
you still run it.
Yeah, I pretend that. Yeah.
Dr. Withrow's revolutionary work started back in the 70s. So at what point did you make the connection that if I can study cancer in an animal, it might benefit the human world?
Well, part of my training as a resident, we were encouraged to go to a human hospital of our choice for 3 months. And I was fortunate enough to spend 3 months at the Mayo Clinic. In the beginning, they didn't quite know what to do with the veterinarian, but I latched on to the oncology group.
He didn't know it, but the young veterinarian was about to build a lifelong bridge between vets and doctors.
And was able to scrub in on human cancer cases and realize that when dogs share the same disease, let's take osteosarcoma, bone cancer, it occurs at least 10 times more commonly in pet animals than kids. So the Mayo guys said, hey, if you're seeing this much bone cancer, you're seeing, 100 cases a year, we see 50. Why not study them?
You can learn from both.
You bet.
Withrow began working on treatments for dogs that could also be applied to human patients. He became obsessed with bone cancers in animals and humans, and that obsession led to something life-changing for one woman. Emily loves to take her dog Gertie for walks near her home in Colorado Springs, 100 kilometers south of Denver. What's remarkable is that Emily can walk at all, and indeed, that she's alive. You were 10 years old at the time. Tell me what it was that first triggered that awareness that something was wrong.
I had been having a pain in my left side for about 3 to 4 months. I was taking a bath and I couldn't get out of the bathtub without assistance. So by the time I got from my pediatrician over to the local hospital, I had no movement then from below my waist.
Less than 3 hours after her bath, Emily was paralyzed. After a slew of tests, a chest x-ray unveiled something awful. A grapefruit-sized tumor wrapped around her spine. The diagnosis, osteosarcoma.
So typically for treatment is you amputate. Well, if they amputated, they'd be left basically with a head. My parents and I think my oncologist knew at that point that it was not going to be curable or very treatable.
Emily began aggressive treatments, radiation, chemotherapy, and surgery. But the cancer spread to her lung, and her prognosis was downgraded to terminal. She had weeks to live. As a last resort, Emily's doctor called a colleague to ask if he knew about any experimental treatments. That colleague was Steve Withrow, the veterinarian.
She's had all the chemo, we can't radiate her anymore. Do you have anything? I said, well, I think we do.
Withrow had tested a cancer-fighting bacteria mixture on dogs with osteosarcoma and found that it doubled their survival rates. Emily had nothing to lose, so her doctors applied for a rare compassionate use exemption to use the untested drug. It was approved.
This is me minus the tumor. This is my spinal cord. These are my ribs.
Emily's doctors created this model of her tumor so they could practice her last big surgery. It was substantial. They removed the tumor, but also 4 ribs, vertebrae, and part of her lung. They also gave her that experimental drug tested only on dogs. And then something amazing happened.
Her lung nodule evaporated. Her lung nodules went away.
Emily's cancer disappeared.
And at that point, she was given 3 months to live.
Correct.
And now, let's fast forward 20 years plus.
Yeah, pretty amazing story.
So today, you are cancer-free.
I am. I've been cancer-free for 22 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
More than 2 decades later, Emily is alive. She needs an oxygen tube and has many health issues, mostly due to damage done by radiation. But she's grateful for every moment she has with Gertie, who, in an incredible coincidence, also developed and survived osteosarcoma.
My human oncologist worked together with a veterinary oncologist and made a great team that was able to, in my case, solve the problem, cure me of the cancer, even in the face of absolutely it's not going to work. It did.
Studying Band's best friend
Perhaps there was some reason that Rover got lymphoma.
leads to an unusual surgery.
Which meant what?
It's never been done before.
When W5 continues.
Max is a 3-legged dog who just might hold a key to fighting cancer. He's part of a clinical trial at the Animal Cancer Center in Guelph, Ontario. After his osteosarcoma was surgically removed, he was injected with a vaccine that shows promise in stopping the cancer from coming back.
Good boy, buddy. Good boy.
Do you believe he's going to be cured, or is this all about extending his life?
They're almost one and the same from our perspective. I mean, because if you extend his life by 3 years, that's basically a normal lifespan for him.
The human medical community is watching closely because many dog cancers are similar to human cancers. Also, dogs' lives are shorter, their cancers progress faster, and there's less red tape to deal with. Max's cancer, osteosarcoma, most commonly occurs and reoccurs in human children and teens. Terry Fox was diagnosed with osteosarcoma when he was 19. After his amputation, the Canadian hero took on his Marathon of Hope to raise funds for a cure. But 5,000 kilometers into his run, he was forced to stop.
Originally, I had primary cancer in my knee 3.5 years ago, and the cancer had spread, and now I've got cancer in my lungs.
9 months later, he died. There's still no cure, but there's still lots of hope.
Cancer is the leading cause of death in all dogs over the age of 2, but one breed is particularly susceptible. 60% of all golden retrievers will get cancer at some point in their lives. So here at Colorado State University, researchers are involved in a rather unique study. They're trying to determine the cause of cancer, not just in these dogs, but all dogs, and perhaps even one day, humans.
Meet Kevlar, Kelsey, Coaster, and Khaki. All 4 dogs are in a landmark study that's never been done before. It's called the Golden Retriever Lifetime Study, and it has been tracking more than 3,000 golden retrievers since 2012.
How's Kelsey been doing?
Very well.
Dr. Rodney Page is the study's lead investigator and the director of the Flint Animal Cancer Center.
We sort of thought we needed to spend some time and just look at a large population of dogs to understand what risk factors might exist that would predispose them to cancer.
What the dogs eat, where they live, how much exercise they get. Dozens of metrics are being recorded. The goal is to find out how many will get cancer and what are the potential causes.
We will be able to take each one of those cancers in each one of those dogs, look backwards over the entire life of that dog and say, perhaps there was some reason that Rover got lymphoma because he lived close to an area that might have been sprayed with insecticides or herbicides, or he might have been exposed to some type of heavy metal in the soil or the water.
So bottom line, you're looking at dogs to save human lives.
and dog lives.
Excuse me. Thank you.
Nan Stewart owns 3 of the dogs, including Kelsey, who was the mother of an entire litter in the study.
I started with Golden Retrievers in 1979, and all of these dogs are related to my first dog. I'm tired of losing dogs to cancer, and that's why I wanted to be involved.
Nan's dogs have high odds of developing cancer based on the shocking number the disease has killed over the past 30 years.
Every single one of them. Lost all, I can't even tell you how many dogs there have been.
The $32 million study is expected to continue for at least another 5 years, when the average dog turns 11, which is about the life expectancy for the breed. By then, Dr. Page hopes he will have an exhaustive list of cancer-causing sources that he can share with veterinarians and medical doctors alike.
Cancer is cancer. It doesn't matter. It doesn't discriminate whether you're a dog or a cat or a person, whether it is identical or not identical. I think we will have some really strong clues about what it is that we share between dogs and humans that creates a problem.
And ultimately the potential for
yeah.
a cure.
Oh, yeah.
Travis Vager lives just a few kilometers from the animal cancer clinic. Most people who've survived what he's gone through are missing a leg. He has 2 and no limp.
Let's go back to when you first sensed that something was wrong. What was your first clue?
First clue, I was a teenager and I was playing basketball and I bent down and noticed it looked like I had 2 kneecaps.
It was 1985. Travis got an X-ray and was diagnosed with a non-cancerous tumor. 6 years later, Travis had it removed, but then something odd happened. It came back. Unusual for non-cancerous tumors. That's when doctors discovered Travis's tumor was cancer, osteosarcoma.
Dealing with death and your potential demise at 21 years old is not something you wish anyone would go through.
Travis was newly married, a new father, and trying to finish a mechanical engineering degree. Now he had to deal with cancer, a cancer that kept coming back.
Every 6 months to a year, it was coming back.
There must have been other options open to you, like chemotherapy or radiation or anything.
No other options for this cancer.
So just surgery?
Just surgery.
Okay.
Or removal of the limb.
And this is where his story becomes something special. Turns out there was an experimental option. His doctor called it a novel surgery.
Which meant what?
It's never been done before.
So what are we going to look at here?
This is from my last surgery.
Travis still has most of his x-rays from that time. The surgery involved removing the cancerous part of Travis's shin bone and replacing it with a cadaver's shin bone. But here's what's groundbreaking. Doctors applied a paste of ground up bone with proteins that stimulate new growth over the cadaver bone. A technique perfected by the veterinarian, Steve Withrow.
Did you know that it had been performed successfully by veterinarians on dogs?
I did not know at the time.
You didn't?
No. Well, if you think about it, your doctor's not going to tell you that I'm going to try a new surgery that has been performed on a different type of animal.
A dog.
A dog.
The bone healed and the osteosarcoma didn't come back. It wasn't until 23 years later that Travis found out there was a veterinarian in his operating room, and that it was Dr. Withrow.
I met Travis and I didn't quite recognize him, but his x-rays popped up this morning. I said, I remember that case exactly.
And today is a special day for Travis. Remember, we said Travis had most of his x-rays. Well, there's one that's missing, the one that shows the original cancerous tumor. It's important to him. It's the monster that he beat with the help of a veterinarian.
Hey, buddy.
Morning.
How are you?
Doing good.
Good.
Yourself?
Great.
Dr. Withrow has summoned him to the Animal Cancer Center for a surprise.
Oh, look at that.
And this is you.
There's the missing link that I did not have.
Back in 1991. And that's your cancer right there.
Almost 30 years after this x-ray was created, Travis will now have a copy to complete his collection.
To know that something that you have no control over could take your life, and to see it again for the first time in 27 years really is an emotional moment
I mean, that's yours. They're yours to,
Perfect.
for a souvenir.
Definitely appreciate that, Steve.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Do you ever think about the cancer coming back?
Not anymore. I don't think about the cancer coming back.
So you got lucky.
I got lucky, and I'm living proof that the technology that goes into canines saves somebody. It saved me.
Back in Toronto, Max is tearing around the neighborhood like only a three-legged dog can. He received an experimental vaccine vets hope will keep his osteosarcoma at bay. Max is 9, and it's anyone's guess how long he'll survive. But if it's more than a year, it just might mean that vaccine has potential to help human cancer patients live longer.
Medical doctors are watching veterinarian research into several other diseases that dogs and cats share with humans, including heart disease, spinal injury, even anxiety.